Admit your wrongs!
We stand strong!
Admit your wrongs!
We stand strong!
Admit your wrongs!
We stand strong!
Okay, great. So now we'll pass the megaphone over to Ellen. Unless the lawyer is here. Yeah.
Hi, I'd like to introduce our lawyers, our legal team. Jeff Orenstein and Andrea DeGrasse are here. And welcome and thank you for coming.
For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jeff Orenstein, and I'm a lawyer at Consumer Law Group, where we are working on your class action lawsuit that was filed in the Superior Court of Quebec last year. Events like this bring up different emotions. The first is immense sadness. I want to express my sympathy for those that suffered at the hands of Dr. Cameron's cruel experiments. And I know that this pain is not limited to just those persons that Dr. Cameron tortured on this building just behind us. What happened at this very institution forever affected the lives of his victims' loved ones, their husbands and wives, their children, their brothers and their sisters. People's lives were forever altered because of what happened here. Homes were lost, and families were torn apart, and the suffering continues to this day. The second emotion is pride. Pride because the survivors of this torture will not go quietly into the night, and they will not vanish without a fight. I am in awe when I watch those that have been battered and bruised rise up and confront their tormentors and demand the justice that they so rightly deserve. But justice has not come swiftly. It has been 70 years and not a lot has changed. The Canadian government, the CIA, McGill, and the Allen Memorial have never admitted their guilt, and they still refuse to say sorry. And the last emotion is a sense of togetherness. I find it important to remember, none of you are alone in this fight. Everyone who has been hurt by the horrors committed at this place share a common goal, though I know that at times people are separated by their means of achieving it. But everyone can play an important role, whether it be through the legal system, or by bringing attention to the issue through the media, or by simply giving each other emotional support. People have different strengths. We need to embrace that because we can accomplish so much more when we all work together. In the last few years, I have seen a major shift in this group. For decades, all of you have endured your pain in silence. But those days are long over. Today, you speak loudly and you carry a big stick. You are not afraid to yell at those that have wronged you, and you are not scared to fight for what is right. I am confident that you will succeed, you will change minds, you will change hearts, and you will get the justice that has eluded you for so long. Thank you.
Abuse has occurred!
Justice will be served!
Abuse has occurred! Justice will be served! Abuse has occurred! Justice will be served! So now we'll just invite Ellen up to talk a little bit. Both of her parents were admitted to the Allen Memorial and were subject to that torture that we have been talking about. So here we go, Ellen Atkins.
Thank you, Christian. Yeah, I want to welcome everybody here today. Thank you for coming. It's been a long drive for me. I drove from British Columbia. I got a lot of skin in this game. Both of my parents were victims here at the Allen Memorial. Both walked into these doors many times and out. Both of them received electroshock treatment, drugs, and sleep therapy and depatterning therapy. Both of them were irreparably harmed. My mother was on antidepressants and tranquilizers until the day she died, and it was very sad. She was both afraid to talk about it and deeply wounded by the experience And that was the signature of her life. And I loved her because she was a loving person. As is often the case of victims that come out of here, they are not recognizable to the people they were before, or they become multiples. My father is such a person, but my mother was not. Somehow she stayed one person. However, she was extremely subdued, and it was very sad. So I do this for her. I began seeking answers in 1998 when my mother, I saw the Sleep Room program on CBC, and I wrote a letter to the government and got basically I was shut down. And then my mother was only 6 months away from her death, and that was that. However, it gnawed at me, and I kept writing letters, and then finally I saw her in a film clip in 2013, and I dove into this research and subject matter with everything I could. So I launched an online campaign, and that coincided with about 2017 with the CBC reporting on Alison Steele getting another ex gratia payment for her mother being in the island, and then people came together and formed this lawsuit. So that's why it's here now. It has bubbled to the surface, and we're not going to go away, as our lawyer Jeff Orenstein said. We'll continue this fight. The toll on myself and my family is remarkable to this day. My brother died. It may not be connected in a way other than one could say he was neglected, because my parents were somewhat neglectful because they didn't really have all their faculties. Even though they would never admit that, it was very hard to admit any of this or deal with it, which is why they didn't apply for the ex gratia payment. But the suffering was carried on. I carried it. I bore their guilt and shame, and I didn't know why. I was just their child. I was born after my mother went to this hospital. I was born while I was conceived while she was on all these drugs. I was I was breastfed as well. So it truly is in my system, and I understand on a very basic level the horror, the depression, the fear, and the trauma that both my parents carried. And I want to bring it now, stop it. I don't want to deal with it anymore. I don't appreciate being slandered, blackballed, or gaslit anymore. I want my parents, my mother especially, I want her legacy to be redeemed. She was also gang-stalked, targeted, blackballed, and slandered until the day she died. Many parents, many patients here could not face it. It was so traumatic. So we are doing it, the children, some of us. We have the effects. It's evident in many of us. The time and the awareness will hopefully heal all these injuries, mainly psychological, which is part of why the evidence has been so hard to obtain. Much of the abuse was mental, and it's been covered up as well because these medical practices continue to this day in one form or another. We want to inform, correct, and write policy against these practices that separated a class of people, the doctors, associating with the governments and the CIA and associations like the Rockefeller Foundation, who also funded Cameron, and regular people, our families. My family on both sides were here for 200 years. My French side was here for 400 years. Both sides were farmers. Both of them are good families. We did not do anything to deserve this. From my research, I do believe that it is true. All illness, including mental illness, is a result of unresolved trauma. And unfortunately, I am still working on trying to find out where the original trauma of my parents occurred, because once again, silence is the ticket for this, getting these people who won't shut up about their abuse out of the way. And I think that's what happened to both my parents. My father kind of became one of them, and my mother just succumbed. And then my sister became mentally ill in her teens and recovered to a point where she is on a cocktail of tranquilizers and antidepressants to this day in a state that does not look good. However, she's functioning, and I must give her credit for that. But as is with her and both my parents, you could not talk about what was wrong. I am making breakthroughs with my sister, but I'd like to actually help her for real. And none of her doctors ever did that. It's been 40 years she's been under the same system, and they never helped my parents either. So I don't think this electroshock therapy helped anybody. There's evidence that it didn't, and I don't think it does to this day. It's merely a means to shut people up who are complaining about unresolved trauma. But isn't therapy supposed to be about resolving trauma? So there's a disconnect that I would like to correct in the systems. I think right now would like to do the same. It would bring honor to the institution of education, and I think that is their intention. McGill has been cooperative with me. They're allowing us to stand here today, and they have released lots of records, not all of them, but we're hoping when we move forward with this that we'll get all the records. And I hope for all the victims everywhere, because this did not happen just here, it happened all over North America, that all those people will get records too, and we will finally bring an end to this secrecy and lies and program of destruction that is all connected to Project Paperclip, which is the declassified program by the CIA that brought over Nazi doctors to experiment on people and build bombs and space things. So they got good lives, they got paychecks, their families are doing well, but ours, not so much. And we're going to correct that. And that's why I'm here. Thank you for coming. Thank you for our law firm. Thank you for all the members for uniting together. And thank you for everyone who's helped this rally, protest, and march today. Thank you.
Time to make it right. Victims and families unite. Time to make it right. Victims and families unite. Time to make it right. Victims and families unite.
Lana is one of the very few victims who is still living and wants everyone to know her story. Now at 79 years old, she is finally willing and able to bring up the past. Lana is as sharp as a tack and wants justice to be served. She was a young victim of Dr. Cameron at the ripe age of 16. She was a rebellious teenager who even sang in the Montreal clubs with Paul Anka, believe it or not. When her father couldn't control her, she was put into the Allen, recommended by a judge. She was given many shock treatments and medications, including LSD. Dr. Cameron took advantage of her innocence and raped her whenever he felt the need. She once heard screaming and snuck down to see what was going on, where she witnessed another victim having a shock treatment. She was so afraid she ran back up to her room. She had no memory of 2 years after she left the place of torture. She ended up in Nova Scotia, where she married and had 2 children. She never ever spoke of her abuse to anyone. Lana worked as a collection agency for the federal government until she moved to private industry, performing again in collections. Years and years went by, and she moved to Winnipeg, where she resides presently. When she heard about the class action suit, memories flooded back to her. She was able to retrieve her medical files, but she had more of a need to tell her story. Lana contacted Cecil Rossner from CBC Winnipeg. The CBC actually picked her up with a taxi and brought her to the station to give her an interview. It was Christine Annabelle who did the interview, which was televised and put on the radio. Her now ex-husband and her daughter were driving together to work when they heard Lana's voice on the car radio, and they almost ran off the road. They had no idea that poor Lana, her mother or ex-wife, had been abused and used as a victim of Dr. Cameron, or who Cameron even was. Silence was the key to these experiments. Back in the day, people trusted their doctors, only to find out that they had been victimized without their consent and used as guinea pigs for the sake of the military. We need this class action to be quick, especially for the few who are still with us. Let them live out the rest of their lives knowing justice was served. Thank you.
We need closure from this fight. We need you to make it right. We need closure from this. We need closure from this fight. We need you to make it right. We need closure from this fight. We need you to make it right. This fight. We need you to make it right. We need closure from this fight. We need you to make it right. We need closure from this fight. We need you to make it right.